Guillaume is doing his PhD under the supervision of Lionel Barnett and Anil Seth in the Sackler Center for Consciousness Science at Sussex University. Guillaume is interested in estimating information flow in neural time series. In his talk, he's going to discuss Granger causality estimations on ECOG time series to explore hypotheses relevant to information processing between phase selective areas and lower visual areas. His talk is titled Top-Down and Bottom-Up Information Flow in Visually Responsive Neural Population, a Granger causality analysis on high-frequency broadband amplitude from intracranial electrodes. Stage is yours, Guillaume.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna share my screen. Wait. All right, can you see?
Yep, we can see it. Looks
okay,
all good.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. So yes, I'm going to talk about some of my PhD research on information flow in visually responsive neural population from Granger causality analysis. So this work is a collaboration with Lionel Barnett and Anil Seth, my supervisors, and Itzig Norman and Rafael Malak, who provided the ECOG dataset on which we are working. So in general, we are interested in like the question of how does information flow between visually responsive neural population, in particular during stimuli presentation. And by information flow here, I mean transfer entropy, which is a measure of relative entropy rates between time series. Mathematically, it relates to conditional mutual information. And under Gaussian assumption, it has been shown that Granger causality and transfer entropy are equivalent. So we are using Granger causality as an approximation of transfer entropy in our work. And we estimate conditional Granger causality from state space model. So this is a parametric approach to Granger causality estimation. And in general, Granger causality between time series writes as a log ratio of generalized covariance matrix of the noise. So the experiment we are working with is an experiment that has been published by our collaborator. So we have 10 epileptic subjects that first go, that have like ECOG electrodes on the surface of the cortex. So they first go in 200 seconds of resting state session, followed by 130 seconds of picture viewing, where they see picture of famous faces and famous places. In total, we have 155 visually responsive electrodes, and about 30% of them can belong to either a category of face selective electrodes or place selective electrodes. So in particular, we are interested in the high frequency broadband amplitude of the visually responsive channels. So it has been shown in previous studies that this high frequency broadband amplitude is highly correlated with local population firing rates. So we use the high frequency broadband amplitude as a proxy for local neural population firing rates. And furthermore, the high frequency broadband amplitude response after stimulus presentation allows us to distinguish between face responsive population and place responsive population, and another category of visually responsive population that don't discriminate between face and place stimuli. So with this, we extract 3 distinct high-frequency broadband envelopes that correspond to to 3 kinds of trial: a resting state trial, phase trials, and place trials. So from this high-frequency broadband envelope, we estimate a state space model that we will use for the Granger causality analysis. So in general, a state space model is a set of a transition equation that you can think as the source of your system. So this equation is the dynamical evolution between the source of the system, and the second equation is the observation, is a dynamical equation of the observation equation. And the goal is to estimate the parameter A, C, and K, where K is the Kalman gain and epsilon is the noise from the observation. We then estimate the covariance matrix of the noise of the observation process, which is going to be useful in estimating the Granger causality, because Granger causality is estimated by definition is a log ratio of the generalized covariance matrices. So to estimate the state space model, we run a so-called state space subspace algorithm, and critically, we use an information criterion, which gives the dimension of the states equation, which you can think in terms of an information criterion that allows to get an optimal bias variance trade-off for the parameters. So here, for example, on these figures, I've reported the singular variance criterion estimation, and we take the minimal singular variance criterion as the dimension of our state space model. So overall, our state space model are stable. That is, the spectral radius of the parameter are strictly less than 1, which means that we can use these estimates for Granger causality. And in particular, we estimate pairwise conditional Granger causality between pairs of visually responsive channel. And we then average this pairwise conditional Granger causality over each channel belonging in specific visually responsive population. And these groupwise Granger causality estimates are the Granger causality estimate that we are interested in and that we will compare relative to resting state. So here in this figure, I have reported our estimation of groupwise Granger causality between groups of phase responsive population, place responsive population, and other visually responsive population. So during our baseline, the resting state, we see some non-trivial information flowing between a distinct group of visually responsive population. And crucially, when phase trials and place trials happen, we see an increase in Granger causality relative to the resting states between from the phase responsive population to the place responsive population. Although at this stage, the effect size of the Granger causality estimates are a bit difficult to interpret because there is no principled way to normalize Granger causality, and we are still like thinking about how to go about doing the statistical inference. So as a summary, we are conducting an exploratory analysis of information flow between functionally distinct visual neural population from the high frequency broadband amplitude response of the electrode channel that we use as a proxy for the local neural population. And this information flow estimation is done through conditional Granger causality estimation between phase, place, and other neural visually responsive population that we compare during phase and place presentation with respect to resting states. At this stage, we see an increase in Granger causality during phase and place presentation between phase and place responsive neural population in both directions. But at this stage, the effect size are still difficult to interpret because, there is no principal way to normalize Granger causality, and we still need also to run some statistical inference. And in future work, we want to validate our methods on simulated ECOG data, for example, using the virtual brain platform, and also to run cross-subject comparison and run statistical inference in a non-parametric manner from the state space model estimation. And also ultimately, we would like to not only explore hypotheses, but also test hypothesis relevance to information processing in visual cortex that could be related, for example, to predictive processing or recurrency hypothesis about processing in between neurally responsive population. And with that, I would like to thank everyone, and also to thank my supervisors and collaborators for their valuable contribution. And I'm happy to take your question and comments.
Thank you very much, Guillaume, for the nice talk. For the questions you have for Guillaume, please share them in the chat or the question and answer panel, and then we will read them and then answer them in the video. Guillaume, as far as I know, in the Granger causality, there is no directionality, right?
So Granger causality, so if you want, we use Granger causality as an approximation of transfer entropy, and transfer entropy give you a directionality of information between time series. So because it is defined in terms of conditional mutual information from the past of a time series X to the future of a time series Y, you take into account the order of the time in the time series. So basically, this tells you how much. Intuitively, this tells you how much the past of the time series X reduces uncertainty on the future of the time series Y, condition the past of the time series Y. So there is some directionality from Granger causality. Yes. I don't know if this answer.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. And Nadina is asking, why do you operationalize information flow specifically in terms of transfer entropy, Granger causality, and other possibilities?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
You can also see the questions in the question and answer panel down here. And the question is from Nadina Chala. Why do you operationalize information flow specifically in terms of transfer entropy, Granger causality, and other possibilities?
Okay. So there are different ways of estimating transfer entropy, and I think the idea of our approach is that we rely on a state space model, which is a parametric approach, which is quite convenient because we have expertise in this specific kind of approach of estimating Granger causality in the lab with specific toolbox that allows us to do that, and also it has some it's like there are other approaches that are developed to estimate transfer entropy, but I don't know much about them. But I would be interested in exploring them as well. Yeah.
Thank you. We have another questions from Holly Wilson, and asking, did you compare information flow between perception and imagery? Recall.
Yeah, so that's something that we are interested in doing in the future as well, but we haven't done that yet. We first want to make sure that we are able to estimate information flow in a sensible way during the picture viewing session, and we still haven't solved this part of the problem yet. But in the future, it would be interesting to compare information flow between neural population during stimulus presentation and also during the recall phase. Yeah, so that's definitely something that we want to do.
Okay, thank you very much. And
thank you.
Yeah, at this point, since we don't have any more questions, I would like to thank all our speakers. Thank you very much, Dominic, Maya, and Guillaume, for your beautiful talks. Oh, we have one more question. Okay, I will go for that. Fatih Yanık is asking, when do the brain, this question is for Dominic. Dominic, you have one more question. Is it fine for Guillaume if we, when do the brain stop using ensembles?
Yes, I saw the question. Thank you very much. So the transitions we see and the operations we describe are actually occurring pretty much independent from when in the experiment we look at. So each and every transition has a very similar distribution of the different operations. So there is no ending point here. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Dominic. Is there any more questions?
There are some questions in the chat box.
Okay, let me see them. Thank you, Shreya, for reminding me. And yes, Priyanka Ghosh is asking, what are the model parameters used in the Granger causality? This is for Guillaume.
Okay. Yeah, all right. I'm going to share my screen again. Sorry. Up. Yep. Yeah. So the parameters that are used in the Granger causality estimates rely on the state space. So if you want, we use a state space modeling approach. So the parameter that we estimate are the parameter of the state space model. And in particular, like what we want to estimate is the covariance matrix of the residual of the observation process. So this like state space model are a general our general way to formulate linear dynamical systems, which they are more general than vector autoregressive model that you may have heard of. And this is a specific form of state space model, which is called innovation form state space modeling. And so, yeah, and like this is the parameter A is a matrix, the transition matrix of the state equation that govern the dynamic of the sources, and from estimating this parameter, you then can estimate the covariance matrices of the residual of the observation process, which then allows you to compute the Granger causality if you want, because you can write Granger causality as a log ratio of the generalized covariance matrix. So like without going too much into the technical details, but hopefully that gives a rough idea.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we have one more question for you. Actually, it is more like a comment. In the, Nadine was asking information flow, specifically in terms of transfer entropy and Granger causality. Lionel Barnett is saying, in terms of Shannon information, it's pretty much the only game in town. And Mohammed Abdel Haq is asking if there is any preprint for your talk, which can be,
okay.
I
can share the paper on state space model from Granger causality. Sure. So let me share it.
Please share it in the chat.
Yeah.
And
okay.
wow.
There you go.
Okay. Yep. Guillaume shared the link. Oh, we should share it to everyone. This is shared to panelists only.
Yep. Sorry.
Okay, I did it. So this is the link for. Thank you very much. And now we are coming towards the end of our session. Thank you very much, everyone. Dominic, Maya, Guillaume, for your beautiful talks and the ideas, discussions.